I posted a video yesterday, links here, arguing that 2021's going to be just as bad and will probably be worse than 2020. And one of the things I was talking about involved how we're handling this pandemic. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. One example from some of the ideas that are floating around out there, coming from the left, coming from the Democrat Party, that are basically want to give to the governor of the state, the executive authority, Gestapo-like powers to handle the COVID pandemic. Now, this is a proposed New York State Assembly law. Hasn't been approved yet. It's only been proposed. Hopefully, it will never get out of the assembly, or if it does, it'll be heavily amended. Or hopefully, if it gets to the governor's office, it won't be signed. So my point here isn't to say that this is coming. This is a warning to people of New York that you're about to be, face Gestapo tactics coming from Governor Cuomo. My point is there are Democrats, in this case in Brooklyn, a Brooklyn Democrat who's proposing sweeping, very ill-defined police powers to be used against not just individuals, but against groups to fight this pandemic. And that's why I think 2021 is looking to be worse than 2020, because this stuff is scary. Let me go into some of the details of it. This is the proposed law. It's got a number, 416. It's been pre-filed for January 6th, which I assume is the start of the New York Assembly session, by Mr. Perry, who's a Democrat from Brooklyn. And these are some of these proposals. And this is changed to existing New York law regarding emergency powers of government with response to pandemics or communicable diseases, not just COVID-19. But you can see here it's giving the governor or his delegates, which is basically anybody he wants to delegate, power for removal and detention of cases, contacts, and carriers who are or may be a danger to public health, and other orders. Provisions of this section shall be utilized in the event governor declares a state of health emergency due to the epidemic of any communicable disease, which has already happened regarding COVID-19. And listen to some of this language. Upon determining by clear and convincing evidence that the health of others is or may be endangered by a case, contact, or carrier, or suspected case, contact, or carrier of a contagious disease, that, in the opinion of the governor, after consultation with the commissioner, may pose an imminent, significant threat to the public health resulting in severe morbidity or high mortality. The governor or his or her delegates, including but not limited to the commissioner or the heads of the local health departments, may order the removal and or detention of such a person or a group of such persons by issuing a single order identifying such persons either by name or by a reasonably specific description of the individuals or group being detained. Such person or group of persons shall be detained in a medical facility or other appropriate facility or premises designated by the governor or his or her delegee and complying with subdivision 5 of this section, which involves people with bad health. If somebody needs dialysis, you can't put them in a prison, or you can't put them and you have to put them in a hospital where they have access to dialysis machines. But here's what's interesting. Look at these definitions, or lack thereof. What is severe morbidity? Now, morbidity is how easily it's transmitted. What's severe? What's severe mean? What percentage? What rate? Or what about high mortality? That's death rate. Now, I know the last time I did it for Hillsborough County, where I live in Florida, and it's probably higher now, but at that point it was 0.0004% chance of dying of the disease in Hillsborough County, catching it and dying. That's 4 0.001%, which is extremely small. But how do they define high mortality? 10%? 1%? 1/10 of 1%? 1/100th of 1%? 1,000th of 1%? I mean, there's no definition here. Basically, the governor can call high mortality whatever he chooses to call high mortality. Severe morbidity, whatever he chooses to call severe morbidity. There's no definition. There's no definitions of what's going to be done here. And persons, reasonably specific descriptions of groups. What's a reasonably description of a group? What kind of groups could we be talking about here? Group. And I thought, well, okay, guys from Brooklyn. I looked them up. He was from Brooklyn. And I thought, what groups in Brooklyn have lately been a problem with regard to the pandemic? Could that be Orthodox Jews? Is that who they're talking about in Brooklyn? I mean, this comes from a guy in Brooklyn. In his mind, what groups are posing a danger? Who does de Blasio say poses a danger? And Cuomo. Orthodox Jewish groups who have been, according to them, ignoring various restrictions and regulations and things like that. So is this going to give, it looks to me like it could very well, if passed as it's written, and it may not be, hopefully it won't be, but this would give the governor the right to basically detain a group, Orthodox Jews, parishioners in a Catholic parish, as a group, a reasonably specific description of a group. That would be it. The parish of St. Jehoshaphat's, or actually that'd probably be Eastern Catholic, parish of St. Andrew's. Okay, everybody who's a parishioner there can be detained, including the priests, the people who work in the office. A given congregation of Orthodox Jews somewhere in Brooklyn. And there's many different types of Orthodox Jews and many different congregations. I'm not getting into that. But a specific group, of Shabbat Shalom or something like that, we're going to detain everybody there because their Rebbe died and they all went to his funeral and they violated, social distancing rules. So, and, we suspect, that's all they have to do is to suspect that there might be somebody among that group who poses a threat, either has a disease, may be a carrier, maybe asymptomatic, but is carrying it. And based on that suspicion, they could, at least this is my reading, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like they would be justified in detaining the entire congregation or the entire Catholic parish. That's the way I read this. And if you go down further, to do this, what they have to do is to show due diligence. What's that mean? Due diligence, produce data, produce the science. What is due diligence? How do you define due diligence? And basically, they don't. How long can these people be kept? Well, it's kind of fuzzy. It says basically 3 days. And if they don't do anything, they could, probably, it looks like they can hold you for 5 days. But if they ask for a court order to hold you longer, they can get it. And in that case, they can hold you for up to 60 days. Unless they get another court order, which it appears they can go up to 90 days. And I guess if they got another court order, they could go another 90 days. I mean, these people could be held for months. And then there's the whole issue of where are they going to be kept? It says appropriate facilities. Now, so what does that mean? If the people are old and infirm, are you going to put them in a nursing home? I mean, it's, if you have somebody who's old and infirm, and maybe they're being taken care of their family at home, but you round up the entire congregation of a given Orthodox Jewish community, and they're not going to be home. There's nobody going to be home to take care of them, so you have to put them in a facility. So you suspect that these people may have COVID. So where are you going to put them? What's an appropriate facility for some, old guy or old woman who needs assisted living? Could it be an assisted living facility? So we're going to take people who we suspect have COVID-19 and put them in assisted living facilities. Has that happened before in New York? It seems to ring a bell, but maybe my memory's bad. Now, if you're, as I used the case before of somebody who needs dialysis, they'd have to be in a hospital. But what about the people who don't have any special medical needs? What's an appropriate facility for them? It's a big question. What's an appropriate facility? Well, appropriate facility is determined by the governor or his delegate, whoever he delegates the power to. What's an appropriate facility for a healthy, young Orthodox Jew or a healthy, young Catholic parishioner from St. Andrews? What's an appropriate facility? You're going to put them in prison? I mean, they're emptying the prisons because prisons, they think, spread the disease. So you're going to take somebody who has COVID-19, you believe has COVID-19, and if you don't believe that, he doesn't pose a threat, there's no reason to detain him. And you're going to put them in a prison? Does that make any sense? When you're releasing prisoners for fear of COVID-19 being spread in prison, you're going to put people who you now are saying may pose a threat of the spread of COVID-19 and you're putting them in prison? Or are you going to, put them, I don't know, Yankee Stadium? Football stadium? You going to take them out into the wilds of New York and give them an axe and tell them to build their own barracks? I mean, after all, they're healthy. They don't need special facilities. They don't need, special care. They don't need hospitalization. So can you put them in detention camps? Here's an axe and a saw and a couple of nails and a hammer. Cut down these trees and build your own barracks. I mean, where do you define these things? What's an appropriate facility? Either existing or established by the governor. I mean, they could, in theory, build camps, like the camps we detained the Japanese in during World War II, and stick these groups in there. They could be Orthodox Jews, they could be Catholics, they could be individuals that they round up. And how do you suspect that somebody may pose a risk? If my neighbor sees me, I don't know, sitting out in front of the house on a chair and I don't have a mask on with my wife, and she calls the hotline and reports them in New York and says, these people pose a threat, they're not wearing masks. Does that mean I pose a risk until I've been tested to make sure I'm not a carrier so they can detain me for 3 days and then get a court order longer? I mean, all these things in this bill are very loosely defined. But the thing I'm getting back to here is not that I expect this will pass as it's currently worded. God forbid if it does. I mean, I'd move out of New York in a second. But this shows you the mindset of some Democrats. Now, I'm not saying all Democrats, I'm not saying most Democrats, but at least one Democrat. And the fact that he got this far with a committee, I mean, this has been read and people didn't laugh it out and say, Jack, throw that thing away. This is going to be discussed seriously in the New York State Assembly. I mean, it tells you the mindset of some people here of what they want to do with power to deal with this thing. China gave us more than COVID-19. China gave us, at least for these people, a way to handle it, which is you drag people out of the house, you throw them in a van, and you take them away somewhere. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. For up to 90 days or more. All they have to do is get a court order. I mean, these days, I think you can get a court order. If you look at the court cases related to COVID-19, looks like you can get a court order for just about anything you want to do with COVID-19, especially at the state level, places where they have elected courts. I mean, this is scary to me that there's somebody in the New York Assembly who wants to give the executive these powers without oversight. They're basically giving their authority as the legislative branch to a governor to basically round people up as individuals or as groups and detain them in the name of public health. That's what's happening here. This looks, like some of the, things the Nazis did. And I know you don't want to go too far with this, especially when I'm talking about Orthodox Jews. But I mean, come on. Groups. What groups have been giving the governor headaches in Brooklyn, where this Democrat might want to draw regulations about rounding up entire groups? Why not just leave it at people? You have somebody in a congregation, you can detain that person. But to be able to detain groups of people because of their membership in a group, because somebody in the group has done something and is deemed to pose a public health risk, that's where you're starting to get scary. That's what starts looking like Gestapo tactics, where you're going to start rounding up people by group, not as individuals. We're supposed to stand before the law as individuals, not as members of a group. But if I'm a Catholic in Brooklyn at a parish, I don't even know if there is a St. Andrew's parish in Brooklyn, or may not be, but I can be rounded up because the priest had a service and there were too many people there, or something was done that was deemed violating public health guidelines. And as a member of that parish, I can be rounded up. I mean, maybe I wasn't even there, but it doesn't matter. I'm part of that, recognizable group, and I'm going to be detained for 3 days or 5 days or 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. What the hell's going on in this country? And this is why, as I said in the other video, and I'll post it up here, 2021 is going to be bad. It's already looking bad to me. Maybe during the course of a year it'll improve. But right now, I don't think we're going to see any improvement. It's just going to get worse before it gets better. That's the bill. I find it pretty troubling. The whole thing is to me, this is awfully scary when you start talking about rounding up groups because they may pose a threat. According to guidelines set up by a governor that are ill-defined. What's a high rate of morbidity? I mean, governor can set it where he wants. There's no science behind that. It's just whatever he wants. And here you have an assembly giving up its authority, giving up its power to the executive. To what end? To what purpose? People don't propose bills just for the sake of proposing. They propose them to solve what they perceive as a problem. What's the problem that this assemblyman from Brooklyn perceives? In which he wants to give to the governor the power to detain people as members of a group. That's scary. That's Gestapo-like. And that's why I think we're headed for big trouble in this country. Let me know what you think in a comment. Like the video, give it a thumbs up. Hit the notification button so you know when I post new videos. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video with your friends. And until the next time, keep fighting.